Okay, that sounds like good. Hey, Warren, it's good to see you again. It feels like just a few days ago I was in Vegas, and we were at New Media Expo, and I wanted to thank you first off for your hospitality, but I wanted to kind of go into the weeds with you a little bit about networking at conference events, something that you and I are pretty good at.
It's something that I end up talking about. Well, you and I met at a forerunner to that NMX event years ago, so we know it works. And, coming up here, I'm just getting ready to go to Affiliate Summit, where the meat market and just the atmosphere there is the best for networking of any show. I was busy networking and got called off to a meeting during NMX, and you went to their version of it.
To the speed
let's talk about that. Let's talk about their speed dating idea, and then follow up with what we think works the best. So you went to speed dating.
Sure.
How'd that come out?
Well, it went pretty well for me. Although speed dating was new to New Media Expo, they hadn't done that type of event before. And so in this particular case, they were trying to leverage some technology, I believe, to make it a little easier for folks to go through this process of a person going from table to table to table and meeting with a company sitting behind that table. So typically at these events, there's a company, they pay to have a presence at a table, and the tables are lined up in some form or fashion. Sometimes it's a big circle, and sometimes there's a process to it. Sometimes there's just rows and rows and rows of tables. But you then go from table to table, and you sit down and talk, or sometimes you stand up and talk with whoever's behind the table, learn about their company, they learn about you, and you try to figure out, are there business opportunities here? Are there some connection? So New Media Expo this time around, they used an online software service, kind of like a social network, to gather up the profiles of the attendees and the profiles of the companies so that you could see who you might want to talk to ahead of time, do your homework a little bit so that you weren't, caught totally flat-footed. Sometimes that happens in these things. You go up to a company, what it is they do, and sometimes you even miss out on a tangent of the work that they do that might be very important for you, even though their core business not so important. So I had done my homework. I was one of the few people that figured out the software and how to make a connection and request a meeting ahead of time in the speed dating event. So I had 4 or 5 meetings to go to right away, and I also did a few ad hoc. It worked out well for me, but the event itself was poorly attended, both by people that had purchased tables and by the attendees themselves. So it was very light on the foot traffic and not quite as strong as it could be. I think it's got a lot of potential going forward. And I think the lesson on that one is the software stumped people quite a bit. They got confused by it before they ever got started. If they knew how to use the software better, it might help. But I kind of suspect they'd be better off just going old school and just letting everybody do a big free-for-all for the tables and go from there.
Okay. So
you've been to, I think, a few more affiliate summits than I've been, and it's been 2 or 3 years since I've been to an affiliate summit. So what have you seen in recent years, or what are you expecting maybe this time around? Because we've got affiliate summit coming up in just, tomorrow?
Actually, I'm going to one tomorrow. That is a reason to go, and that's my main coverage when I write about it, is the networking, because the connections are expected. I think the affiliate summit group lives for connections. Actually, bloggers are, great at working together and collaborating on things. But, and I think the dating idea of trying to hang that title on it may or may not be good. It's kind of a turnoff to me, but who knows? Coming up with the name, I can't say that failed because of the name. I think you're right about the software. And I certainly recommend anything to do to encourage people to prepare for these meetings. But the atmosphere of knowing you're going to meet people and not wanting to miss out on that, I think that's one of the draws of the meat market way of doing it. So my recommendation is still to go to every one of these events that you can and go prepared. Find out who the speakers are that you want to see and plan on meeting if not meeting the speakers, meeting the companies. Just at an exhibit hall, you can walk around and learn a lot. In between those two, I went to the Consumer Electronics Show, a huge thing, and I went, multiple days, and I've been going for years to these things, and I can get bored at a show really quickly, especially if I'm not talking to anybody. And I just experienced a day where I walked through a show all day long, saw some wonderful things, was thinking about meeting up with somebody at the end of the show. And as I'm sitting watching the last presentation that I watched, I got the idea, I'm not really talking to anybody or doing anything today. I might as well go home. Big advantage of living in Las Vegas. And I think the difference there is there was just no activity. I spent another day trailing Robert Scoble around the technology show. Oh, you can't hardly keep up. And he was just going back to places that he'd already been. And
that's important at a trade show. Going back and following up makes that a huge second impression. A lot of times it makes, it helps cement that impression of, oh yeah, we met, we know each other, because when you're in the moment, you get to know the person, but a day goes by and 1,000 people walk in and out of that booth, and it's really easy to forget the people that you had good conversations with.
Well, the interesting thing was we met the CEO of an Israeli startup in a hotel suite where there was perhaps 10 employees and a like number of people visiting the booth, and we were at that point an entourage of 4. Robert attracts a crowd everywhere, and that crowd went up and down through the day. It was a fascinating day. But as we got into as we got our entourage in there, we got lots of attention because we were with him and some good conversations. But, it wasn't the same thing as having known what it was there. I was there to talk about them. And of course, I left when the entourage did, not when I wanted to. Now let's go back to Meat Market. I'm going to go through the people that I can find that I know will be there, read up on them and have a reason to talk to them. I know what I'm looking for. I know I can talk to them about my aim, what I'm up to. And I know there's that atmosphere of networking. What I can't get when I go to software and try to set stuff up is I don't know whether or not at the last minute the company's going to switch off and have a person that's been on the job for 3 days. I've come to expect that most meetings are going to be good as connecting human to human. Old school networking, new school networking, it's the same thing. Today we can connect with a lot more people a lot faster online, but there's nothing like meeting people face to face. I just heard a story this morning about somebody shopping for a house in town here. They were lined up with an old friend. They'd lived here before. They had long-term relationships. Friend recommended a realtor who turned out got a job promotion and a change and was busy when my friend came to town. He was put off on a very experienced salesperson, but not experienced in real estate, and had only been with the firm for a few months. It ended up being a bad experience. That reflects on the whole networking relationship, and it was one of the reasons why a lot of people who are well connected don't want to share things. I tend to trust more than most, but give the proper caveats. I know this person. I'm not endorsing him, but it's an idea, because most people will take an idea over, I've got to go look in the phone book. And here's the best part.
Well, it's one of the things at the conferences in Vegas, people.
Yeah.
They sometimes hire people to staff the booth that have an attractive face.
Right.
Dancers are real popular hires, but they don't know what they're talking about, so you got to find your way through them.
Real estate story is that the guy ended up using somebody who he found on Realtors.com, but after connecting with this person, not only was she much more prepared, but after they got done with it, his transaction ended up being a leasing contract that's only going to make a few $100s for the person. And he said, "How could you possibly spend all this time on me for this?" And she said, "Because, I want to treat everybody the same way and treat them well. And, he's now twice giving her name to recommend. And if you need a house in Las Vegas, at least right now, I have a recommendation.
Doesn't that kind of point out? Doesn't that point out the fact that when you go to these shows, you go to them a lot more than I do because you're right there in Vegas, but you and I both have skills that allow us to adapt quickly in a conversation and figure out where opportunities are. But for your average person, it's just real important to know exactly what you're looking for out of the show. At the recent show I went to, I was looking for a couple things specifically. I wanted to find people that I might interview or host shows with in the future. And I was looking for potential WordPress development clients or any tools that help me become a better WordPress developer. 3 specific things. So if I go up to a booth, if I enter in a conversation with people, I want to be, essentially armed with those bullet points. So if those people, might fit the bill, I'll let them know, hey, I'd like to partner with you in this way, that way, or another way. You have to have that ready. It's not so much a business pitch as an opportunity pitch, I guess you could say.
Well, you need to be ready with aware of those things. The more you are, the better prepared you are. But I found that, and I would recommend anybody learning to do that to go through what you just described as perfect. But I was in town for the show where I met you for completely unrelated reasons to going to the show. And I just went to the show because it was the nearby show and something to do. I went to a luncheon because I didn't have anything to do during the lunchtime and didn't see any reason to go off site and find something to eat. And I was randomly set down next to you, and I had no agenda, and we got to know you first. That wouldn't have happened if I'd asked, I'm trying to think back what I was doing at the time. If I'd asked those questions at all, we wouldn't be friends today. And that's the same, on the flip side, what often happens at a trade show is that person that they bring in for the week knows that they need to get, I've heard a story about a $40 million booth being put forth, and the staff there and everything was because they wanted to impress one guy on $1 billion deal. Everything else that happened in the booth didn't matter because they knew that, Mr. X was coming in, and the main thing they were training staff on was whether or not to recognize Mr. X. So if you weren't Mr. X, you were more or less just fodder, so the booth would be busy when Mr. X came in. And that may be true in the giant corporations. It's not true for me. What I see is I get talking to the girl standing at the front of the booth. I go through in my head what value that connection can be, and I quickly move on. At the same time, once you get into talking to somebody who's interested in the industry, you don't know where that's going to lead, because some of the best connections I've ever had came from, in fact, I'd say all the best connections tend to be from, maybe there's an exception, but they tend to come from the serendipity of the connection that's a friend of a friend. And that can't happen if you're so tight in saying, like, I'm going to go to each booth and hand out my flyer. That's not what you want to do. If you need ads for the current website you're working on and you come to Meat Market, go to every merchant that's there with a table, you're not going to win. If you may get what you need for the transaction, but you're leaving 100 times as much opportunity on the table, and you're doing just as much work. So, and I'll tell you, this way is a lot more fun. So, I'm really looking forward to Affiliate Summit. I never miss one for that reason. Talk about it, cover them. People ask me, why don't I run an ad, and how much money are they paying me to do it? They don't need to. It's that good of an experience, and I do not get a lot of affiliate checks, and I don't work for a merchant. It's the experience of networking with like-minded people that there's always just gobs of opportunity.
Sounds good. Real quick before we sign off, who are you looking forward to possibly seeing talk at the show at Affiliate Summit?
Oh, I've got to meet up with Declan Dunn. He's the best, like the grandfather of. I'm sure he likes being called that. The grandfather of Affiliate Summit.
He's a super smart guy. I've met him once, but he's
Yeah.
Some people just impress you with their intelligence right from the go. He's definitely way up there on that list.
There are a lot of people there. There is more money moving through the hands of the people there than just about any place I go. The major corporations, the mega big corporations of the world, or Fortune 500, aren't well represented there. But when you get outside of that, the money flow for anybody who is trying to work with online properties and monetize them right, it's there. If you haven't found it, hey, come up to me at Affiliate Summit and ask. I'll point you in the direction of somebody that you ought to know. Looking forward to meeting you all.